Right. Well, welcome everybody to the first in-person / Zoom meeting of the Iowa City Bird Club. We have quite a group here. I haven't counted, but 4, 8, 12, 13, 14, 15. I think we got 15 people here. I'm very pleased that we got Erica Billerbeck to come and talk about her experiences as Iowa DNR Conservation Officer for Johnson County. And she has written this marvelous book. It's got woodcuts on it and stuff. You got
I was going to try to advance it.
well, anyway. So it's got a lot of really cool pictures in it, and she did those herself. So that's fantastic. So without any further ado, I will give you Erica.
Thanks for inviting me to the to talk to you guys today. I put together a slideshow. I've spoken at a few different several different places since the book was published in 2020, and kind of tried to include things in the slideshow that I've gotten questions about in the past. So basically, I'm going to kind of go over my background a little bit. I feel really weird because it's like a whole slideshow full of pictures of myself, which is not pleasant for me. But just to give you a little background about how I ended up where I am today, as well as I've got a bunch of pictures in the slideshow, many of which are from cases I wrote about in the book. So I don't know if anybody's even read the book yet, but we got one at least. So it'll kind of make sense for those of you that have read it, and for those that haven't read it, hopefully it makes you want to read the book, I guess. So I started out back when I had hair in college. I went to Luther College up in Decorah, got a degree in biology there. And at the time, I didn't know, I'd never hunted, never really fished growing up. I did a lot of camping. I was outdoors a lot, but I didn't know anything about conservation officer or game warden type work. I wanted to go into environmental education. So I got a degree in biology from Luther and started right away doing some internships. These pictures are taken from the Lime Creek Nature Center in Cerro Gordo County. I was an intern there for a while, and then I got hired full-time as a naturalist for the Franklin County Conservation Board, which is like the Hampton area. And I enjoyed it, but for some reason, after a couple of years, it just kind of started to get old, I guess, for me, and I wanted to do something different. So at that time, I had a friend who was also a Luther grad, and she was working as a deputy conservation warden in Wisconsin. And she put me in touch with her supervisor, and I went over to Wisconsin and interviewed with him and ended up getting hired as a deputy warden there. Basically, I talk about it in the book a little bit about what a deputy warden does, but it's basically the same thing as a full-time conservation warden, but they restrict your hours so that you don't get benefits, and they make you do all the work that the full-time guys don't want to do. So you're the one that's like sitting in the weeds watching people while the full-time warden's in his truck eating an ice cream cone. But it's kind of like you got to do the stuff nobody else wants to do to work your way, to a full-time position. So the good thing about the way Wisconsin does that is that they actually send their deputy wardens through the law enforcement academy. So that was really big, because to be hired anywhere for any law enforcement agency, specifically in Iowa, but mostly in Wisconsin too, you have to be sponsored by an agency in order to attend that academy. So they put me through the academy. I graduated from that somehow. And shortly thereafter, as I was going through the process of becoming a full-time officer there, Iowa had a couple positions open up. I applied because I'm from Iowa. I applied back home and got that job. So it was a very awkward conversation I had with my supervisor after they'd just paid for my law enforcement academy training, and to say, guess what? They didn't make me sign a contract or anything. So I boogied back to Iowa, and they were a little bit mad, but they're over it. So we have sent some Iowa people their way, but so I was hired in July of 2000, and I was assigned to Webster and Calhoun counties. In Iowa, obviously, there's 99 counties. Some officers are assigned 2 counties, some officers are assigned 1 county. It just depends on like the population and stuff. So over there, I was assigned to Webster and Calhoun. So that's like Fort Dodge, Rockwell City area. And it's typically when somebody gets hired, it's typically to a county that nobody wants, because before they open those counties, there's lateral transfers that happen. And so I was kind of stuck in Fort Dodge there for a while. And it was interesting. I had a lot of like crazy things happen in Fort Dodge. It's a very different territory than Johnson County is. But that's kind of where I went through my main training. For Iowa, after you pass out. So since I went to the academy in Wisconsin, I had to pass out of the Iowa one. I had to come and do the physical testing, the sit-ups and push-ups and run and stuff. And then also had to take a really long written test. Then we go through a DNR Academy training where we kind of go around the state and learn specific things that we would need to know to enforce fish and game laws, like commercial fishing or trapping, things that they don't teach you in that actual law enforcement academy. After that, we go through FTO training. So overall, it's about a year's worth of training that you end up going, and it's a lot of living in hotels and things like that. So I stayed in Fort Dodge for about 5 years, and I had really odd things happen there, one of which that news article is the most memorable thing. And when I think about being in Fort Dodge, I had a case with a family out of Lehigh, which is a little tiny river town kind of south of Fort Dodge. And I had gotten a phone call, got called out in the middle of the night to poach deer. Somebody had poached a deer at Dolliver State Park. And it ended up being this guy that's up in the window there. It's his son. That's Dennis Grandinetti. It was Grandinetti's son who poached the deer. It's a very long, drawn out story, but the short version is I ended up seizing the deer with a search warrant, and in the process made him very, very angry. And overnight, he ended up taking his family hostage in the upstairs. They own a bait shop in the downstairs, and they lived in the upstairs. So the whole town of Lehigh was shut down, and I was getting phone calls the next morning from dispatch wanting me to go to Lehigh because I had just been in this residence and the SWAT team needed to know the layout of the rooms. And I was like, I am so going to get in trouble over this. And he did file a complaint, but it's just all kind of nonsense stuff. But he's there eating a bowl of cereal while he's got his family held hostage, kind of. It was a very strange situation. So from Fort Dodge, after about 5 years, I'm like, I'm out of here. I'm going to go to Johnson County. So I'm not sure why this thought occurred to me to go to Johnson County, but it did. I just wanted to be somewhere other than Fort Dodge at that point. Johnson County, obviously nobody transferred into it ahead of me. So it's kind of a county that people are scared to be the officer in just because it's so busy. And, you have the Coralville Reservoir that keeps you hopping all summer long. And I spend my entire summer pretty much in a boat. And then on top of that, I'm sure you guys are familiar with the Hawkeye Wildlife Area. And, it's a 14,000 acre area between Iowa City and Cedar Rapids. So it gets a lot of business. I've seen some of you, I think, out there before. But there could be a conservation officer just assigned to Hawkeye and you could stay busy. So it's kind of like, and also a lot of people shy away from urban areas. They don't want to be assigned to those, but I liked it. So during this transition time, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Iowa Outdoors magazine. So during that transition, my main field training officer was Chuck Humiston. This is the only picture I could find of Chuck. Sorry. I was searching all over looking for pictures of Chuck, and all I have is this one of him handcuffing another officer in training. And obviously having a little too much fun in the process. But Chuck used to write the Warden's Diary column for Iowa Outdoor Magazine, and he was going to retire. And he was fairly concerned about who was going to write that article after him because he had been writing it for a very long time and he didn't want it to just go to whoever. Oh, there's some deer. So somehow, and I'm not even sure how this happened, somehow word got back to the editor that possibly I would be a person that could write that. And long story short, I wrote that column for the next 10 years. And in the process, kind of figured out that I really enjoyed writing, and it was kind of a really satisfying part of my job because the feedback I got from the public was really good. So, and that's my son a long time ago now. Each I have two kids, and each of them had one article in the thing that was kind of about them, sort of. So the other reason I wanted to write this, well, the main reason I wanted to write the book is I had a lot of stories that I couldn't really write about in the Warden's Diary column because that's a family-friendly magazine. I had a word count limit of 1,000 words pretty much, or close to that. And some of the stories just needed longer to be able to tell the story. And some of them weren't something that you'd probably want to put in the magazine. So, that was one reason I wanted to write it, is I wanted to be able to tell more stories. But also I wanted to kind of, I just over the years have learned that really people don't have any clue what we do. And so I kind of wanted to take the chance to like explain like this is kind of what we do, and hope people have a better understanding of it. Because a lot of times people think that my job is to go out and deal with animals or save animals or, you know, go on animal calls, and that's primarily what they think that we deal with, because people are always asking me why I have a gun, why do I carry a gun? So obviously that is part of our job. We do get called to injured animals and things like that. This eagle was hit on the interstate, and that I wouldn't even have taken the picture, but the trooper like begged to have his picture taken with the eagle, but he wouldn't hold it. And the fox was one that somebody held as a, like they took it when it was a baby and held it as a pet. So we had to take that. But so we do deal with animals, but that's a very, very small part of what the job is. Primarily, this paragraph kind of explains what the job is. It's taken from a book called Nature Noir by Jordan Fisher Smith. He blurbed my book, and I've spoken with him on the phone, but it says you protect the land from the people from the land, the people from each other, and the people from themselves. It's what you are trained to do without even thinking, a reflexive and unconditional act. If you're lucky, you get assigned to people who seem worth saving and land and water situation is not hopeless. If not, you save them anyway. And maybe in time, saving them will make them worth it. And this is just like every time I'm driving through Hawkeye or dealing with somebody that's unpleasant, like I kind of have this in the back of my mind that still, you know, it's my job and still worth doing, even though it doesn't always feel like it. So pretty much I'm dealing with people. That's my main species that I deal with. And our job is kind of broken down into various things we do. One of the big ones is investigating wildlife or fish and wildlife crime. So I just included some photos here to kind of give you an idea of the picture up in the upper left of the deer laying there on the road. There's a baby deer that was cut out of that laying there next to it. That is a case I write about in the book. It's up around the Swisher area. I had a couple high school kids that felt like the best thing on earth was to go out and run over deer in fields and just run them over with their truck. So that was kind of the beginning of that case, is getting called to this dead deer here. We do a lot of stuff with bait, with deer bait cases, which is the bottom left there. It's just one of my evidence photos that I put in a report. There's a pile of bait there, and it's really hard to see in this photo, but where it says blind, it's just somebody clearly hunting over bait. And I caught those people. I had a cell phone camera up on that blind. So as soon as they walked to the blind, my phone pinged and I went there, and they claimed it was during bow season, first of all. And they had guns with them, and they claimed they were just practicing holding the guns that were loaded, you know, and everything. This middle picture on the bottom is taken from after a search warrant I did at a place in Cedar Rapids with a group of hunters that were basically just doing whatever they wanted. Like every law you can think of, they broke it. I get the headless deer calls every fall. That one was in Johnson County, and that one actually got solved too, because with social media, I'm able to kind of put those on the Johnson County Sheriff's Office page, and people just go nuts. And literally within minutes, my phone will start ringing with people thinking they might have something to contribute to solving that. The pictures on the upper section there, those three are all from one case that's still going through the court system now. A really horrendous poaching case, the worst of my career, down in the southern part of the county. They're killing sandhill cranes, swans, deer, all out, you know, tons of deer. And then this x-ray is of a goose that he shot with a rifle. I just wanted to have it x-rayed to show there wasn't shot pellets in it. So just to give you an idea, I guess. I also do stuff with fishing. I just don't have any photos to put up there. So in order to solve those wildlife crimes, the job has changed dramatically since when I started in 2000. Like when I was in Wisconsin and the beginning part of my career in Iowa, I spent a lot of time sitting in a truck, watching people. And now the majority of my cases stem from some kind of technology, whether it's cell phones. I write a ton of search warrants, and that's how I end up getting most of my evidence, because people put everything on their cell phones, especially the younger crowd. They pretty much document their entire lives on the cell phone. So the bottom left one corresponds with the middle one here with the dead deer. That was a case where I sat and waited at their apartment complex in Cedar Rapids and waited for them to come back from hunting. And I snapped that photo. They shortly after that photo unloaded some deer from the back of the truck. And the guy was a convicted felon, and he carried some gun cases into the apartment. So that's what I needed to get enough to get a search warrant to get into his apartment. We served that warrant the next day, and he had, I think, 5 guns within reach of the front door when we went in. So clearly, like, in violation of his felon status. This one on the lower right just kind of shows what it looks like when I get a cell phone search warrant back and I can go through people's text messages and read one thing after another. It just, like, you'd be amazed at the stuff people put in there that kind of help make my cases successful. The upper right, the map, is a photo or a screenshot taken from a tracker warrant that I did. And this dealt with a guy who I wrote about in the book. A lot of these cases in the book that I write about continued on after the book was published or something else happened. And then that's the case with this. The case I write about in the book, the guy ends up getting revoked from hunting for several years. But he was one of those people that just can't stop. So he continued on. I got tips that he was still fishing, that he was going to Alaska and fishing, and he can't, if you're revoked in Iowa, you're revoked in 48 other states. So you can't can just go to some other state and fish. But I think he felt safe doing it. So I worked with the Alaska Fish and Game officers up there and got a search warrant to put a tracker on his car. So I was able to see him drive to this pond up in northern Johnson County and fish from there. So that turned into another search warrant at his house. This guy does not like me one little bit. But it was interesting because when we did the search warrant there, I purposely didn't go because I knew it would just make him more mad. I went to interview somebody else, but one of the officers that was at his house called me and he's like, "Erica, this guy has your book. It's on his nightstand." And I figured out that he identified himself in the book, but because I use fake names But his friends, because I got his cell phone in the search warrant, his friends were texting him and calling him by the character name in the book. And I just was like, I'm gonna get sued, but so far, oh, it's okay. So anyway, he's continuing on with some issues. Summertime is all about, for me anyway, it's all about boating enforcement. It's a lot of drunk driving arrests, drug cases, anything that you can think for a crime happens on the reservoir. I write about a case where I charged somebody with kidnapping because he took a lady, this guy took a lady out on the lake and would not take her to shore, and he attempted to rape her and stuff like that. So stuff that you wouldn't even imagine happening is happening out there. Some funny stuff like this kid that wanted to, every time I tried to get him to do field sobriety, he'd reach down and take a handful of grass and put it in his mouth. And that kind of stuff goes into the complaint and affidavit. When you take them to jail, you write up, what happened. And the press, I think, keeps an eye on that, and they pull out the ones that they think are funny, I guess. The other main thing about summertime is that with the reservoir, I'm in charge of some seasonal water patrol officers. They're typically college kids, if you can't tell by the picture up in the upper left. It's one of my favorite parts of the job now is working with them because they keep me excited about it, where, I might not otherwise want to go out and work, like they want to. And so it's kind of keeps me young, I guess. That bottom picture is just a bunch of drugs and drug paraphernalia from one summer. And then there's the diving rock area. Just part of the navigation enforcement. It's just a huge gathering spot for typically young people drinking, doing drugs and jumping off the rock. Yeah, yep. And this area has, it's a core regulation that you can't jump from the rock into the water. So I can't really enforce it. I can tell people don't jump. But our main concern is that right where that's at, the channel runs right in front of that rock. And I think people think, well, it's a lake. There's no current, but there is, obviously. And it runs right there. And we've had so many drownings right in that spot that it's kind of a hazard. Yeah. Yep. Oh, well, no, it's not Linder Point. It's Scales Bend Road, off of Scales Bend Road. I know where you're talking about at Linder Point, and there is a little bit there, but not too much. The other part of boat enforcement is dealing or investigating boat accidents. We also investigate hunting accidents, but my main thing has been boat accident investigations. It's just challenging. It's very different than investigating like a car accident, because cars stay on one plane pretty much and they leave evidence on the road. Boats, your evidence is gone and everything is moving on several planes, and it's just very challenging. So I've learned a lot. I did talk about a case in the book. I don't know if you remember the 13-year-old girl that was killed on the reservoir here on Memorial Day weekend several years ago. I write about that because it's just heart-wrenching and hard to deal with as an officer when that happens and you're the first one on the scene and everybody's looking at you like, now what? And you're like, it's horrible, so you got to kind of shut down one part of yourself and try to focus on what you should be doing. But I think the upper picture I think was from Clear Lake, if I remember right. I wasn't involved in that. It's just kind of a cool picture. The bottom left was on the reservoir. That guy was drunk. He missed his turn in the middle of the night. And he was just really hammered drunk. The bottom three pictures are all there was a double fatality on the Mississippi River a couple of years ago that I helped with that investigation. And it was an unbelievably complex investigation where we did all kinds of evidence gathering and witness interviews and stuff like that. But the guy just ended up getting a couple involuntary manslaughter convictions. So the upper right was a boat that blew up on the reservoir. They just didn't run their blower long enough, and it kept the fumes trapped in there. And as soon as they turn the key, it just goes. Luckily, they had a couple kids on the boat, but they jumped just in time, and they were just burned a little bit, but not bad. And then I write about in the book several cases of body recoveries, rescues. The case on the right here was right by Diving Rock, and you may have heard of that one. It was a case that ended up getting some legislation changed with a boy that ended up in the water. There was an adult present and nobody called it in, so he went missing for 4 days or something like that. So we get called in to assist with those. It's the sheriff's office responsibility, but we have side scan sonar units, so we can check the area and tell them where to drag, basically, or where to put a diver down. So we did recover him that morning. We get a lot of, since I'm right by Lynn County, I go up and help with all the drownings there at Palisades State Park, where the river's so dangerous. The bottom left with the dog, that case I write about in the book. That's not really a rescue. It was a guy that took off on a motorcycle, ended up in a pursuit from, I think, Mount Vernon, and he ended up, it was funny because I was down at the time this was going on over the radio. I could hear this pursuit happening, and I was way down in the southern part of the county, and I had my seasonal officer with me, and I told her, I'm like, this guy's going to end up at Hawkeye. I just know it. And sure enough, he ended up at Hawkeye. I found him briefly hiding in the willows there right by the river along the south side of the wildlife area. And he took off. We ended up getting a canine to come from Iowa City to help look for him. It was the canine's first time in a boat. Ended up catching the guy, and he was just covered in mosquito bites. Like, mosquito bites had mosquito bites. And that, I mean, would have been punishment enough. I mean, the only reason he ran is he didn't have a motorcycle license. And it's just crazy. The upper left-hand corner, that was also an interesting case. I think I wrote about the initial time I encountered these people at the Hawkeye area. They were out in a boat fishing. The guy was drunk, and I asked him to come into shore so I could check their fishing licenses because I was in my truck. And they went off, took off on the reservoir and didn't come back for hours. Eventually he comes back and he's still drunk. And the only reason I remembered, like, when I encountered them later where this picture is taken is because the guy only had one leg, and he thought he was going to get out of getting arrested because he couldn't do the standing set of field sobriety tests, but I do all mine in a seated position. So the following, I don't know, a couple of years later, I get a call like I do every spring of a boat stranded on the northern stretch of the reservoir where it gets really shallow. They get run up on ground, or, they get stranded. So we go paddling out there in our canoe, and as soon as I'm getting close, I'm like, oh, I know who these people are. But is the only time in my career where once I got there, they told me that he told me that he has not had a drink since I arrested him last time. So they were thankful that I took him to jail that day, and that's never really happened before. So we got him pulled into shore. I write a lot in the book about some various, land crime. I'm sure if you've seen Hawkeye, you've seen piles of garbage and trash dumped out there. I get that all the time. We end up digging through the trash, looking for evidence, that kind of thing. We're getting more and more into timber thefts, especially certain parts of the state, but that's becoming very common as well. So, and then the bottom right picture is a ginseng case that started in Johnson County and then kind of rolled into a bigger case where we ended up doing a search warrant on the ginseng dealer up in Northeast Iowa and making a very big ginseng case there. So you can't dig it on public ground, and people were out at Hawkeye digging it. And it kind of, like I said, just rolled. We ended up having one of the people that we caught at Hawkeye, he ended up going and doing an undercover buy from this, or undercover sell to this dealer. And then finally, we do things that are not really related to fish and game at all. In a lot of the counties in the state, if you're looking at our computer where we can see all the officers, where they're at any given time, a lot of times the only officers in the county are either like one deputy and a conservation officer. So you get kind of backing up other officers or helping assist other agencies a lot. We had officers at the Perry school shooting. This is just the bottom right one is just to show I do some after school programs and things like that with kids. I responded to the Makokata Cave shooting, which was the most eerie crime scene I've ever seen in my life. And just little things like the officers, they were checking fishermen in downtown Des Moines one day or one night and ended up driving by a fight that was going on, and they got involved in that. And it just takes people by surprise because they're like, what are you doing here? You know, you're a conservation officer. Why are you involved in this? So oftentimes we kind of have to explain, like, we're peace officers, just like a trooper. We just focus on fish and game. But if there's a fight going on where somebody's getting beat up, like, do we just drive by or do we stop and try to stop it? So, oh, I got to mention this upper right. This is like one of my favorite pictures because this is a drunk driver up in the Sutliff area. And he was taking a swing at the partner that I was working with. And I told that guy to send me his body camera footage for my report, but I knew that it was going to have a picture of me stopping him from getting punched. So I send that photo to him now and then just to remind him, like, hey, remember that day that I saved you from getting punched? I don't know how much time I have. I was going to go through one more little. Okay. So one of the cases I write about in the book deals with an individual that I stopped and got in a pursuit with at the Hawkeye Wildlife Area on the north side. I initially pulled into that first parking lot that's just kind of east of the shop because there was a truck parked there and it had a big tarp on the back and you could tell the truck was full of stuff in the back. And I just wanted to like see what I was suspicious maybe they were going to dump the stuff, but I wasn't sure. So I just pulled my truck in, pulled up next to the little S10 or whatever it was, and looked over, and the person looked up at me, backed right out of the parking lot and took off down the road. And it looked like a woman, it was long blonde hair. And I end up getting in behind him because it was just odd. I mean, usually people will talk to me if I pull up and roll my window down or, act like I want to talk to them. But they didn't. So he went to, or she, at the time I thought it was she, but went west on Amana Road and made a right turn onto Blaine Cemetery Road without turning their turn signal on. So I was able to have a reason for his stop. So I flipped my lights on, get them stopped. And at this point, they've kind of turned. So they're still kind of facing west on Blaine Cemetery Road, even though it goes to the north. And I walked up to the truck. I'm like, hey, I was just going to talk to you back there. What are you doing, today? And he told me that he was just out to Hawkeye to put makeup on and he didn't want people watching. And I'm like, this is the least weird thing at Hawkeye, so I don't really care. And look at my hair, so like I can really talk. And I'm just like, okay, well, I just wanted to chat with you. We've had a lot of garbage dumped out there, and I just didn't know if that's what you were up to. He's like, oh no, this place looks like bleep. And I don't, he's like, it just makes me so mad. And I said, okay, well, can I have your driver's license and registration and stuff? I go back to my truck. As I'm running his license, he takes off. And as he takes off, the dispatcher's telling me he's got a warrant for his arrest. He's suicidal, blah, blah, blah. So I start chasing and he ends up bailing out of his truck kind of by Hanging Rock or that area and running down to he bailed out of his truck and he goes running down the hillside towards the river. At the time it was flooded. And I bailed out of my truck and ran about 3 steps and thought, I don't run after people anymore. And also I didn't think it was probably a very good idea, not knowing, what his plan was, or I was expecting honestly to hear a gunshot. I thought maybe he would kill himself, but he didn't. He was just running down through the woods yelling, "What?" He was just yelling. By this point, I knew his name, obviously, so I'm yelling his name, telling him to come back, and he wouldn't come back. Long story short, he ends up in the river, climbing a tree. And he clung to that tree for a good 4 hours before we got enough response, because the depth of the river was low. I couldn't get my boat in, like we had to have firefighters come, and obviously this is the response we got. And here he is. Finally, we had officers go out in those yellow suits and got him out of the tree, because the whole time he's in the river, he's yelling, "Help, I'm freezing, help, I'm freezing." This trooper that's in the yellow suit off to the right there, he was in training at the time, and he had his training officer with him. And this suspect is yelling, "Help me, help, help, I'm freezing." And the trooper's yelling back, "Are you armed?" And he's just like, "No, I'm freezing. I'm not, I'm not dangerous." But he just kept yelling, "Well, we don't know that for sure." And I'm just like, it was funny. We were finally like, just don't poke the bear. He's not armed. But finally got him back. He went to the hospital to be checked out to make sure he wasn't hypothermic. He somehow wasn't. So he's still in my custody. I pick him up at the hospital and I drive him down to Johnson County Jail, which is always an awkward ride. And he ends up telling me, he's like, I knew that I had a warrant. I just wanted to see my kid the next day. And I knew if you caught me, I was going to go to jail and I wouldn't be able to see my kid. And he's like apologizing for driving unsafely and making me drive unsafely. And I'm just like, okay, okay, it's a little bit weird. But we ended up seizing his truck, going through with a search warrant, going through the truck, and he has meth, everywhere in the truck. So that's kind of the case I write about in the book, is kind of ends there. And that was in 2019. Oh, here's the truck. So when he bailed out of the truck, he left it like this. The door is open and he's got this giant knife strapped, 2 knives strapped to the inside of that door. And the whole interior of the truck was just jam-packed full of women's clothing, wigs, meth, needles. Like, it was just chock full. So he ends up getting a meth charge, and it was, I think, his 3rd offense. So it becomes like a felony. And he got the eluding charge and the possession of weapons and stuff like that. So then 2021 happens, and I am in California at Sequoia National Park on vacation. And my seasonal officers call me to tell me that there's been some fires out at Hawkeye. And they had gotten called down they were at the shop washing a boat, or that's what they were supposed to be doing, is washing the boat. And a bird watcher, probably one of you guys, I don't know who, stopped at the shop and told them, "Hey, there's smoke on the south side." And so they are always looking to do anything other than wash the boat. So they decide, we're going to go look for the smoke. So they come around to the south side and drive by one parking lot. Didn't see the smoke initially, but as they went past, they saw there was smoke there. So they turn around, come back, and pull into the parking lot. And there's clearly a fire happening on one side of the parking lot, and there's a truck or a van, I can't remember, parked on the other side of the parking lot. So they pull up, they talk to this person, and they're like, "Hey, do you know anything about this fire?" And he's like, "No, what fire?" And it's like smoking and billowing, and they didn't tell me this until much later, because I think they were worried about sounding like politically correct. But later they tell me it was kind of weird because the guy was wearing like fishnet stockings and he had a wig on. And I'm like, oh no, it's the same guy. And sure enough, we ended up getting several more fires that summer. And that's the map of kind of where all the fires were. And when I got back from vacation, I went to every single fire site and gathered evidence. Things like this little thing of craft paint. There were piles of clothing that were burnt. And one pile of, oh, this is a potato Olays box from Taco John's or whatever, Taco Bell, Taco John's. And then there was one pile of clothing that hadn't been burned yet, and there was a Five Guys burger uniform in it. Well, I knew after running this guy's information again that he was on probation and that his workplace had been Five Guys. And I knew that before that he had worked at Taco John's. So it's kind of a convoluted story, but based on all these pieces of fire evidence, got another search warrant for him. I was going to put a tracker on his truck and see what he was doing. And I'm over in Iowa County getting a search warrant signed because that's where the guy lives and that's where his truck would be. And that while I was over there that evening, my seasonals call because once again, they're doing something they shouldn't be doing and they're driving around on the south side of the area and they say, hey, he's here. He's in his car. He's like, we're watching him. And so I told him to back away, don't approach him, just stay there and I'll get back as fast as I can. So I end up getting back and we kind of had him blocked in, you know, there's only a couple ways in and out of the area on the south side. And we had him blocked in an area where there was no really exit. And we just kind of watched. Eventually, I wanted to get to where my seasonals were because I don't like to leave them unattended for super long. So I drive past him. I could see him in the parking lot. I drive past, go south to my seasonals or east to my seasonals. And in that time span that I'm talking to them, he leaves. But in the process, he set 2 more fires. So we're there like trying to put this fire out that he set a pile of clothing on fire. And obviously it's him. He's the only person there at this time of night. And then further along, as we're going west, he's got a hay bale that's all lit up. So I had to call the fire department, put that out. So we go to his house the next morning with, oh, by the way, so here's the search warrant application. I like to write. I enjoy writing search warrants. And whenever you write a search warrant, if you're going to search a person, you're supposed, like it's good practice to put a photo of the person there. So I pulled his photo from Facebook and I thought this was appropriate. So, and the judge thought it was humorous. So that's why I put in the search warrant application. We go to his house that next morning. We took along some troopers and a DCI agent because this DCI agent was interested in this guy because of some sex crimes that he was investigating. So we go knock on the door that morning. He wouldn't answer. We knew he was in there. And the guy that was like pounding on the door said, it feels like he's on the other side of the door, like pushing against it. So the DCI agent's there and he's like, well, let's kick it down. And we're like, yeah, we don't do that really. But if you want to, you know, feel free. So the DCI agent and one of our guys ends up kicking the door in. And here's the guy standing on the other side, completely naked. Like it is scarred in my brain for life. He's got his pink pigtails in. And searched his house and we found all kinds of corroborating evidence, like these black drink trays that were probably from one of those fast food places he worked at, was one of the things that was at the burn site. Meth pipes, all kinds of stuff. But it was kind of fun because the DCI agent has a dog whose sole job is to sniff out digital evidence. So Moose got to go through and sniffed out all these things that we found there in the left-hand side. So since then, I've used her a few times when I'm looking for SD cards and things like that. She's good at it. We found a Hawkeye Wildlife Area sign there at his house too. Then 2022 happens. Here he is again. And the wildlife guys told me they thought that this guy was back and they thought he was living at Hawkeye. He happened to be caught on one of the cameras I had up to catch litterers. And I'm like, yeah, that's for sure him. He's got the pink hair. So my plan was, at this point, he has an active warrant for his arrest because he never took care of the charges from previous that I had on him. So I'm just going to increase my patrols through the south side. So one morning I'm driving through the south side and exactly that same spot and exactly that same van, he was parked there. So I pulled in next to him. He looks over and sees me, and it was like a repeat of what happened before. He backs out of the parking lot, takes off, and I take off after him, turn on my lights and sirens, call deputies for backup. And I get him stopped on James Avenue. And I get out of my truck and I walk up to him, he rolls the window down. He's like, Erica, what are you stopping me for? I'm like, you've got a warrant for your arrest. You need to take care of this stuff. And he's like, I was going to do that. I just haven't had time. And, I'm just trying to go about my business. Like, just leave me alone. And I was like, I can't do that. Why, turn the van off and hand me the keys. He takes off. So I run back to my truck. I take off after him. By this point, deputies have stop sticks set up at the end of James Avenue where it turns onto the pavement. He gets around the stop sticks. I get around them barely. I almost hit it myself. Get around the stop sticks. We keep going west on whatever that pavement is. Eventually, another set of stop sticks gets set up there further west, and he stopped before the stop sticks, but not before tossing something out the window, which I assumed at the time was meth. And I tried to keep track of where it was, but there was a lot going on. And he also at this time was wearing a bikini. He just had a bikini on and the pink hair. And so I'm calling out, like, in case he takes off on foot again, to the dispatcher, like, hey, just so you know, suspect is wearing a bikini and has pink hair. He threw something out. I don't know what it was. So we get him stopped. The deputy pulls him out of the car. By this time, he had the top off. I'm not sure how he had a top on when I initially talked to him, but he got the top off. And deputy puts him in the back of the police car. And as I'm walking back to my truck, I hear him yell, hey, Erica. And I walked back. I'm like, what? And he goes, no hard feelings. I thought, classic. So he goes to jail again. Then 2023 happens. This is the last one, I swear. Just recently, we had another pile of stuff, clothing thrown out there. And I thought there was no way he was going to come back, but he came back because one of the tubs had his son's name written on it. So he's working at a restaurant in North Liberty, and I went and spoke with him, and he denies doing it, but I kind of think he did it with the thought that he would get caught because he's back on meth. I mean, I had a discussion with him about, are you using again? He's on probation. He's like, he ends up admitting that he's using again. And I think he wanted to get caught because he wouldn't admit to doing it. I'm like, it's your kid's stuff. Like, it's your kid's name on it. And he's like, well, you have cameras everywhere out there, don't you? Like, can't you just see who it was? So I think he did it knowing that there was a good chance he would be on camera, maybe wanting to go back into treatment, or being forced back into treatment. But I still haven't decided what to do with him. So, like, really a littering ticket doesn't, I don't know. I'm still thinking about it, I guess. But last slide, last story. This is in the book. And if you read the book after this meeting, it's a story about a marijuana grow that happened out at the Coralville, over by Sugar Bottom, where the bike trails are. It's just off of a bike trail about 50 feet. We watched this grow for several months and had thousands and thousands of pictures of this person tending to his little plants there. There's just a small grow right behind him. And I worked with the D&E, the drug and narcotics guys, for this. There's so much like honeysuckle and everything in the area. There was one tree that we could put the camera on, the trail camera on. And we thought for sure, it's like so obvious that there's a camera there. Like, there's no way, but he never noticed it. So we end up figuring out he's out there one day. We go out to, it's time to bust him, and go out there with the drug guys. We're standing on the trail. He walks out on the trail, and he's drawn down on by the narcotics guys, and he wears the same clothing every time he's on camera. Because he threw us off for quite a while because he's wearing some military pants, like from the surplus store that had a name on the back. We thought it was his name, and it's not. It's just from the surplus store. But that's another story. Anyway, this narcotics guy down in the bottom, he's very short. He's a wrestler. We walk him back through the trees, to the grove, because he claimed he was just hiking, he just hiked through the bush. And he points at the camera, and right as he pointed, it took that photo. And that's like, it's hung in my office because the look on his face, just like, it's like, oh crap. Because I think he realized then that we probably have thousands of photos of him doing it. So anyway, that's all I've got. So if you have any questions, I'll take them.
I have a question. This is Sandy.
Okay, hold on. I had one question in-house here was what was the penalty for that? And it was really not much. It was just like a possession of marijuana thing. We did a search warrant on his house, and he had all kinds of weird stuff. Like he was a chemistry student at University of Iowa. So he had all kinds of beakers and like pills and like all kinds of, he had like thermite, or is that what's called thermite? Like under his baby's crib. And it's like, well, the narcotics guys were having a ball with this entire thing. And they're like, hey, who do we call for Father of the Year? We want to nominate this guy. It's got the thermite under the crib. Yeah, so he didn't really, it's kind of a slap on the wrist, basically, because we couldn't prove he was distributing it or anything. So, yeah, Sandy, go ahead.
Well, I wanted to know how people that are Zooming tonight, if they want to buy your book, how they can do that.
So it's at Barnes and Noble. It's at Prairie Light.
Okay, great.
It's on Amazon. I don't know, anywhere, I guess.
Thanks.
Yeah, any other questions or? So they asked, am I the only officer for Johnson County? There is, I am assigned solely to Johnson County. Then there's another guy that's assigned to Iowa County and Johnson County. So he comes here occasionally, more during like waterfowl season. He's here quite a bit. But he primarily stays in Iowa County. So. No, unfortunately it's not. I wish it was. It's published by the University of Iowa Press. I don't know, at the time that it was published, I didn't really know. I was just so happy it was getting published. Like I didn't ask a lot of questions. I was like, where do I sign? So no, it's not. I do have some for sale here, $20. Any internet questions or is that it? Do I have interns for just during the summer? Just those seasonal officers is the only time I have interns. So otherwise I'm on my own kind of.
Steve Woodruff.
Yep.
Recently retired.
Yep.
He was a wildlife biologist, so I'm sure you worked
Yeah.
with him many times.
Yeah.
We're hoping that they find somebody to fill that position.
Yeah, it sounds like it's going to be a while. Steve Woodruff, the biologist, retired. And he's already missed. Like, I really like working with him. He was so funny. That's right. He had plenty of stories himself. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, hopefully I didn't
There-
worry you.
There was one chat that said, thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you.
Well, hey, Erica.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me tonight.
Oh, well, we're really pleased.
And any more questions? I'm going to stop recording then.
Yeah.
Okay.